Lights out, green flag, here we go. You pay for the whole seat, but you're only gonna need the edge.
The Thunder Road Podcast, telling the stories of the South Texas racers from the past and present.
Hello, my name is James Parks, and welcome to another edition of the Thunder Road Podcast. At this time, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Top Hat Signs and Designs, REK Suspension and Consulting, Proline Fabrication, 112 Bodies, and of course, SNS Monuments. On this episode of the Thunder Road Podcast, we speak with the Mr. Who, Kenneth Pearson, about micro mini sprint racing. And on this edition of the Thunder Road Podcast, we have Kenneth Pearson. Kenneth has been around the micro mini sprint scene for quite a long time. He's going to tell us some of his stories, some of his tales about his dad getting involved in racing, maybe some anti-skateboard stuff, and we're just going to kind of go from there. He's got a ton of stories, and hopefully we have a good time with this one. So with that being said, thanks for coming on.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate that very much.
We've heard a lot of stories. We've heard a lot of tales about you. A handful of my friends speak very well of you. There's a ton of other people that I don't know that still speak very well of you, but my close friends seem to think you're a great guy, super talented in the micro and mini sprint world. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Kenneth Pearson, 50 years old, been involved in this since late 1986. When my dad and my neighbor next door, he bought a car, and my dad decided that he wanted to get a car, and it has led into us being involved in racing for, 36, 37 years. Yes, sir.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
It's a long time. What, other than your neighbor having the car and your dad seeing it, was that just the fire that was that what kindled the fire to get y'all started?
Well, not really. There was things I was doing back then, the youth and growing up, trying to figure out what I want to do in life, and a little testosterone kicking in here.
Were you a bit of a rebel rouser?
Well, I don't know. You call it rebel rouser, but it was my dad saw me going to a movie theater and buying these high dollar skateboards and going down there and hanging out and all this, and he really wasn't having it. He was grew up with my grandpa in a mechanic shop and Alice through his youth, and was always working on cars and doing things, and he was always the engine guy through our whole racing program, and so he saw me doing all this kind of stuff, and he wasn't real happy with it. And this is what I get from my mom, the real reason why he decided to get into racing. And so the neighbor bought a car, and then my dad went down there, and we had two boats, and at the time we were fishing all the time. We were doing all kind of things. He decided that he wanted to trade a boat for a race car, and to Don Copeland.
One expense for the other.
That's it, just a trade. And so that got him into racing, and always liked the cars, when we first went out there, but never thought we'd get involved.
And there you were, in the thick of it.
We were right there. And when I took off, I remember just having fun with it, and we wanted everything shiny and polished, and taking Jeweler's Rouge and polishing wheels and doing all kinds of stuff with the old buffing wheels. And
well, tell us a little bit about the cars. Obviously, you're cleaning to polish it up, but what really was this car? Give us a description of what it was.
It was a micro/mini sprint car. They were known as, they were 250 stroke, single cylinder or twin cylinder engines back then. And
when they mass produced, people were building them in their own shops.
A lot of home building.
Okay.
Back then, there was a few that were building them, kind of manufacturing the cars. I would say from the 1984-85 era, Sawyer manufactured, Factor One, racing. They were building cars then, and those are the names I remember.
So you were in the Alvin area doing this.
Yes, sir. Grew up in Alvin,
So
7 miles from the tracks.
Tell me a little bit about how, because this is always intrigues me, but tell me a little bit how, when this got started, how did y'all know where to get parts? How did y'all know what was out there? Obviously, people are making some things, but some things I don't know that you can make. I don't know. There was a lot of guys making their own axles.
No, there wasn't a whole lot of that. It was, especially with home built cars, it was, gosh.
I mean, were they crude? Were they crude?
That's very crude.
Okay.
Very crude. Nothing manufactured, especially on the home built type stuff. Once the manufacturers started coming in there, Factor One, Sawyer, and them building those cars, man, as my early childhood, I always saw the cars racing around the track, and those guys, the Tim Elkins, the Doyle Caudells, the David Kahanics, those guys were fast.
We call him Uncle David around here.
Yeah. That's 1988, you know, and David was running cars for any and everybody he could at that time. I remember we went out to the track one night, and he was running had the engine. It was mounted in the back with an independent wheel suspension, you know, and eventually that you had to run a solid rear axle the way the rules went. But
Innovators.
yeah, I mean, it was kind of crazy, but it come along. The manufacturers come along. They're very crude. The shocks, springs. I remember people running mono shocks off of motorcycles.
Yep. No, when the dwarf car stuff got started, my understanding in the dwarf cars was they stripped the motorcycle down. They used everything they could off the bike. So it was a shock off of this and a shock off of that, and then they just basically made a sand buggy. So I'm going to assume that's how the minis and the micros got started.
It was very much that way. I mean, nothing like you see today, for sure.
No, I want to talk about some of your race and some of the different things, but you touched base on it's not what we see today. What is one of the biggest advances that you've seen in the cars that are being put together today?
Man, it's the you've got so many options. You've got car builders out there, left and right, West Coast, East Coast, Central part of the United States, and just didn't really see all that back growing up. It's evolved a lot. You know, and I'm going to say 36, 37 years of watching it. And the technology's evolved a lot. I mean, shock packages all the way to the motor packages.
Yeah. As we discussed earlier, the prices are up there, but you almost have to have that to compete anymore.
Sure. It's evolved, and it's gone where it needed to in all this kind of racing. It was held back a lot. But probably for some good reasons years ago.
Yeah, it may be a little out of hand now, but it definitely could have been worse.
Oh, yeah.
So let's go back. Okay, so your dad said, we're not skateboarding. We're not going to do that. You got the car. You painted it pink, I believe, is kind of what I understood.
Yes. My dad, when he got his first race car, and he decided we was going to paint it pink, and we hand-painted the numbers on it and everything. It was number 44. And we called it the Pink Panther. And at one point in time, we even bought I think it was about 4 foot tall Pink Panther. And for hot laps and all that, we would tie wrap it to the wing on the car.
That's awesome.
So
the kids enjoyed that, I'm sure.
That was what it was for. My dad really enjoyed that.
No, a lot of times as racers, we overlook that those kids are our racing future. We get wrapped up in the race night stuff. We get wrapped up in all the BS that goes on, and we forget that those little eyes are on us 24/7. A lot of local racers are local kids' heroes, and we forget that they're always watching. So
yes.
Anything you can do to keep those kids involved, anything we can do to keep those kids on the right path, that's what we need to do.
That's correct.
So hanging that little Pink Panther deal on there was a big deal. I'm sure there's kids that are adults now that remember that.
Yes. And when my dad eventually sold it wasn't his first car, but the second car, we painted that chassis. The frame was maroon, and the bodies were pink again. And we passed that legend on to, and the number. We decided in 1988 to number it 88. from 44, and we passed that legend on to a gentleman named Fred Pate, and they still run a memorial race for him.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit more about some of your early races. Obviously, you jumped out there. Your dad jumped out there. Tell us a little bit about what took place there.
Well, I got an opportunity just because my dad and a lot of the racers, they liked my dad, and I got an opportunity to drive a lot of different people's cars, even before I was eligible to race. And it was after the races, of course. Back then, you had to be 16 years old for insurance purposes to be able to race. But knowing that the track
changed.
Owners, it's changed.
It's changed a lot now.
Knowing the track owners and all, they really helped me along. And if I wanted to go run after the races, hell, I run more laps in different people's cars after the races. And I spun out. They'd come push me back off and get started. And hell, it was a good time back then. You know, it was really fun after the races. We enjoyed it.
Good deal. Talk about some of the influencers for you. Some of the folks that helped get you and your racing to where you're at today.
Well, I would. One of the biggest influencers is probably Leroy Struthers. He did a lot for me, over the years. He gave me the opportunities that most people wouldn't ever give anybody. And when he did that, hell, I felt like I owed him something, and owed him wins, and that's what we did.
You took pride in what you did. You were doing a job.
Yes.
And how did that fare for you?
Well, pretty good. We did real well. We won him a national championship. We won him a lot of feature wins. He got to enjoy it. When he came along and decided to put me in a car, it was late 1993 in a turf tire car to start with. And turf tire class was fairly new at the old track, what was Triple C.
So tell the folks what a turf tire car means. Let me just give a brief rundown of what a turf tire was that year at Triple C.
Okay. A turf tire car is basically a 600 cc engine on gas, stock.
Still got motorcycle shocks on it?
No, sir. By that time, we were getting a little more sophisticated. Things were moving along. The chassis were getting out there, and people were buying manufactured chassis. But it's basically what you would put on your lawnmower, and
a true lawnmower tire.
A true lawnmower tire. We would put that on all four corners, and that was in 1993 when that was adopted into the Alvin races and our rules. And man, from there, Leroy had an extra chassis above the shop that he bought from Bobby Sawyer, and he had an extra engine, and my dad and them, they were talking, and it just happened to be the year I came home from college, and we were sitting there, and they put it together, and we went to the shootout in Tulsa, and the car was fast. I might have messed up a few things, but I wasn't quite there yet to get that chassis figured out. But when before the season was over, and from 93 to 94, we sold the car and won 9 features by June of that year.
You were on a roll.
We were running pretty good with it. Yes, sir.
What was it like going from Alvin, small town Alvin, rolling into Oklahoma to run that shootout deal?
Well, the good thing was I'd been exposed to it way early. The first time I'd ever been, me and my dad, we hopped in the van with Leroy in 1987 and rolled up there, and it was at that time, I think it was the first 2 times they'd run it in the little Coliseum next door.
Yeah.
And that was 85, 86. And 87, I believe, is when they went to the big building. I just remember it because we went up there and we helped Leroy, and we pushed him off, and they had a little runaround where you could, in the parking lot, where you could run the cars warm them up, do whatever you needed to. And I just remember I thought, man, that's a 10-acre building.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. If you've never seen anything like that, and it doesn't have a single pillar right through the middle.
The first time that I went to the Chili Bowl to see the show, I had seen pictures and I had seen obviously video on television and stuff. But when we first walked in, like it took me a few minutes to be okay with what was happening there because you walk in the door, it's loud, it's obnoxious, there's people everywhere, vendors, the whole deal, and those cars are just screaming. It took me a few minutes to be like, this is what we're gonna do for the next 4 days. So just pace yourself, but it's a little overwhelming.
Oh yeah. It's a pretty neat deal, but that was first exposure to a race like that.
So you guys rolled up there in the van, watched the deal, decided we're gonna bring a car back to this, and here we are.
And we did. I think I did my first Tulsa shootout in 1991. Had a Sawyer 600. It was a long wheelbase. It was a coupe style chassis. Didn't even have down tubes on it back then. We had an old Kawasaki, and we've been working on. Got some flat slide carburetors on it, tuned them in, and won the B main, started in the back of the A, and realized that I need to do better.
Did you ever just sit there and say, we made it, we're here?
We did.
We're here, we made it.
Yes, sir.
It's quite an undertaking.
It's a big deal. It's fun.
Did you guys return back to the shootout for other years, or?
We had been went in turf tire car one year, and then when I started driving Leroy's, you can call it 600, but back then we didn't have A class and we didn't have these different classes. Basically, the old school way it was run what you brung and hope you brought enough.
Yeah.
And it was.
Do you think that helped the class or maybe hurt the class in the long run?
Well,
I guess it was more about what was available back then too, though.
Sure.
Probably wasn't as many 600s mass produced.
You didn't have an engine builder on every corner of the United States, willing to build you the motors like they do today.
Yeah.
Is one.
Don't loan one to Isaiah. Hopefully he's got this engine deal solved, but be gentle on that right now.
Yeah, I mean they're all over the place now, and it's just a matter of whose program you want to really get under in the motor department. But back then, I mean, hell, my dad was degreeing my own cams. We had a Steve Collinsworth. He was a local guy, and he had his own flow benches and everything there out of Alvin. And he when I won the national championship, he flowed the head, and he did everything to make sure that was a good motor. And for 100 laps, we nailed them. They didn't have nothing for us.
So talk about the local racing scene there in Alvin. Triple C mostly is where you raced at, or was Gulf Coast Racing at the same time, or?
It was Triple C all the way up till 1992, I believe.
Okay.
And in 93, the track was expanded to the NMMA allowed 5th mile tracks to come into play with the micro mini sprint scene.
Okay. And
when they did that, it opened up. They made the walls, stretched everything a little bit, and it was the same track at Triple C, but they changed the name to Texas Thunder Speedway.
Okay.
At that time. And I'm sorry, Texas Motor Speedway.
Oh, wow.
And that went into a whole different deal of lawsuits. And
it sounds expensive.
I think the gentleman wound up getting a little payoff of it when they built that track up.
Did you ever get to race at Odom International Speedway?
I did.
Did you? I ran a go-kart around there a few times, but...
It was won quite a few races there at Odom International Speedway. And funny thing about that is Don Witherspoon.
Yes, sir.
That had that track, and
we'll call him the proprietor.
Yeah, we got to know him pretty well, and his sons and everything. But one of the funniest stories I got about that is I think it was 1995. They were running a winter series, and they were running once a month. And my dad couldn't make it, but me and my brother, we loaded up and drove down there and raced.
Ready to go. We were ready to race.
And hey, it's a race. You know, we didn't care about the money, just the wins back then. Anyway, got over there. We raced, won, and we were sitting back there, and we were enjoying ourselves and talking with old Don Witherspoon and having a cool one. And we got to talking about my brother. He was going to A&M at that time up in College Station. And Don asked my brother, he said, hey, what are you going to school for? And my brother looked at him and said, I'm going for engineering. And it could have been, I'm telling you, 5 to 10 seconds went by. And old Don looked at my brother and he said, going to be a train driver, are you? We just, one of the funniest stories I've ever heard. Like, well, something like that.
Something like that. Right down that alley for sure. No, the Witherspoons are also another name that have been involved in racing for a long time. I rode my motorcycle out that way. It's probably been about 5 years or so, and there was a little bit of grandstands left, and the catch fence was up, and there was some old billboards still up there. But I've been told that since it's all come crumbling down. But
okay,
that's one of those local gems, those local jewels that kind of got forgotten about. But lots of folks race their go-karts, mini sprints, dwarf cars. There was a lot of stuff. The big deal was trying to outrun the train to get there.
Oh yeah,
the train track was
got
there.
caught by that before.
Yeah, so. You guys are racing around the Alvin area. Obviously, you did some Motorman International. You went to the shootout, but on a local level, tell me about some of y'all's accomplishments. Not just maybe yourself, but as a team, as a group. Like some of the things that you're really proud of that y'all were able to pull off in that area.
Well, because
it's not always about the wins. Sometimes it's about just the things that y'all were able to get done.
Sure, many years ago. What was one of the fun things that we accomplished was, and I can brag about that a little bit, was we'd go down there and race it when it was Texas Thunder Speedway and win the feature down there, and we'd load up and drive down to Gulf Coast Speedway, and we'd tag on the back of that, didn't even run the heat races or anything else, and we won some features down there too, all in one night, 2 for 2, and that was
doubled up.
A pretty good thing. We had to load up pretty quick. They ran the cars early down there, and then we'd, like I said, load up and go down there. And then over the years, with the Hey Mr. Who thing and helping people, and man, there's a whole ton of people that I've helped, and I think they appreciated it over the years. Jake Lucas's, Weldon Buford's, Isaiah Garcia. Man, I could just throw some more names out there, and
you've had a hand with lots of folks and lots of cars and lots of teams.
Yes,
your name comes up a lot in conversation. Like I said, I'm fairly new to the mini sprint world. Obviously, coming in with Ray Allen, we're learning as we go. Ray Allen introduced me to you at Alvin one night, and obviously I'm helping Isaiah a little bit, but and talking to some of the folks up there, like a lot of folks are like, man, that guy knows his stuff. He knows what he's talking about. So when he speaks, they listen. I used you as an example one night for Ray. He was getting a little excited on me, and I said, go talk to Pearson, see what he says. And he came back, and I said, let's just do that. Like, quit trying to make our own stuff up. Obviously, the man spoke. Let's listen.
Right.
So.
Well, yep, it's been enjoyable to help Ray Allen, and he always gives the compliments back, which is a very good thing.
You touched base on the Hey Mr. Who, so this is a pretty big deal for you. Lots of folks know you by that slogan, by that deal. So tell us how that actually came about.
So it goes back to Leroy Struthers, and when you go back to that time of Leroy. He was good as gold. Hell, he could crash you, and he'd give you the parts to fix your car. And he didn't mean to. That was just Leroy. And anyway, his thing about him is he had a difficult time remembering everybody's name.
Yeah.
And so his saying to everybody was, "Hey, mister," and he just did that. Hey, how you doing, mister? Kind of doing one of those. And the good thing about that was made it real easy when he asked me to start racing or driving for him. I wanted to do something that represented him, but also represented me driving for him. And I threw the who on there with a question mark. And for many years, I never even put my name on a car. In fact, until this recent car that I just recently sold, I never put my name on the car. I just put, "Hey, Mr. Who" on the side of it with a question mark.
I've seen that on many cars for many years. I never understood how it came about.
And so that goes along those lines of, it was something to give it its own unique touch, but still represent Hill.
Good deal. And I'm sure the family and everybody, they all understand it. And they all appreciate you carrying that on for them.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about maybe shoveling some rice.
Well, that goes back to the opportunities that Leroy gave me, man. I tell you what, he gave me a lot, and it was what he would do is with his trucking company, he had the opportunity to bring in truckloads of rice hulls, rice flour, rice, and it might have been a little bit off, a little bit here and there, but you could also take that and turn it into cash. And so he'd bring it into his shop, and he would, on a belly dump trailer, and he'd dump it in the middle of his shop. And he'd tell me, Leroy, he always knew me by Kenny. He's, "Hey, Kenny, you sack all this up, and you're going to have something there. You're going to have some race car parts.
We're going to race.
Everything that you do." So, of course, I was sitting there at the opportunity, and I took advantage of it.
How old were you at this time?
19, 20, 21.
So at let's just say 20 years old, you're going to you're going to turn rice into cash, rice into gold here.
And we did. He had the scales. He had everything set up, the sacks, the bags, the stitching machine to sew it up. And we'd stack it on pallets, and then he'd tell me where to go deliver it. And I bring the cash back to him, and he said, "Okay, that's either a new rear end, that's a right rear tire, or that's everything I brought back to him. I gave it back to him."
So how long did we, after you sold the rice and you guys kind of raced around there, did some stuff. We talked about the shootout situations, going up there and traveling. How long did you actually race in the Alvin area predominantly?
Up until 2000.
Okay.
And so I had a car there that we'd built and modified at Sharp Racing. It was a Sawyer chassis, 1994 chassis, 62-inch wheelbase, which was 2 inches longer than the normal wheelbase. Anyway, we took that car and we modified it and made it one hell of a turf tire car and won a lot of races with it. In fact, in 2000, the first 4 out of 6 races were won in that car, and the other 2 races were with different drivers. I loaned it out, and I sold the car right before I moved down here to the Corpus Christi area.
So is that why you kind of quit racing regularly? Because you moved?
No, I didn't quit racing then. Just opportunities changed. Picked up different opportunities. We had at that time, right before I moved, I started helping a gentleman named Kenny Plouffe, and he wound up buying a car and a 99 Factor 1 chassis. And at that time, I'd never drove a Factor 1 chassis, and we raced a little bit in the 2021 era, and decided I wanted to start making some modifications to the chassis. We did that, and in 2002, we went out and won quite a few races around the country, even at the Nationals again. Qualified 8th fast time. I think there was 173 cars that weekend.
And where were these held at?
Paducah, Kentucky.
Kentucky, okay.
And I got a picture during time trials running the low line, coming right by a cone, cutting it as close as you can get to it, and we're doing a wheel stand coming out of the turns. And pretty good photo. And that was in 2002. We on preliminary night, we finished 5th overall, and then started 8th on the Nationals night. And raced their way up and finished third. And the two cars that finished in front of me was Kevin Bear that raced for Factor One House Car and Scott Sawyer that ran for Sawyer House Car.
Wow.
And we were right there on them. But the funny things that are about that is, I've always kind of been a bigger boy, and we came across the scales, and they look at me, and it's 830 pounds. There ain't no way you finished third 830 pounds.
I've battled that my whole life, so.
So we went over there, and the only thing they checked back then was boring stroke, and everything else was legal. And we saw the sunrise come up, and had a few cool ones.
Awesome. Were there any other folks from the Alvenair that went and participated in that back then?
There was a whole bunch.
It seems to me, like I said, I'm fairly new to y'all's mini sprint micro sprint order there, but it seems like it's a very tight knit community.
Well, it is, and there's some really good people in that area, and they're all still a good knit people. When I went up there last night, I was at the track last night and walked around and tried to make sure I hit all the people I've known for many years and at least shake their hand at a minimum.
Yeah.
And
no, that's like I said, lots of folks. You have a ton of respect to that track, whether you realize it or not. There's a ton of folks that respect you there.
Yes, sir.
It's you don't see that very often. A lot of folks kind of forget some of the guys that made the sport what they are today. So,
and there's some guys there that are still there and that have been there as long as I have, and making it that way as well.
Yeah. The growth from what you saw, and you said they were a little bit crude to what they are now. Like, what do you see the future for these cars to be? You've seen a lot of transition. We always say, well, they can't go any faster. Oh, but they can. What do you foresee the transition with these cars to be in the next 10 years?
Well, that's a very interesting question because, man, it's grown so much. Watched it grow so much. I mean, to even Hoosier putting a 1.5 inch block right in the center of the tire to give you the wide tire. Man, it's all around the motors, the suspension, the shock game is huge. Really got to have that nailed down. And the future of it, with Yamaha not making motors anymore, and there was people that ran carburetors on injected motors years back, and they hadn't made carburetors on a motor since 2002 on a Yamaha.
Yeah, I think when we first got that car, it had a Cirrus motor carbureted alcohol.
Sure, yeah. and I mean it's been very popular for a long time. The growth of it is I think it's going to be around the engine package.
I got you.
If the 600 dies out, what are you going to replace it with?
Yeah, a lot of the dwarf car stuff, they're 1,000 cc's or close to. I don't know. I mean, I don't know safety wise and that stuff. I don't know what these micro mini sprints can handle going to bigger cc. I can't foresee them wanting to go smaller cc, but you just never know.
Right.
That was one of the issues I had with the dwarf cars was some of the early dwarf cars were built to run, 100 horsepower engines, and then they started strapping these bigger motors to them, 130 horsepower. They were designed for one speed and one speed only, and then we started going faster, and then they started bolt-on racing tires, and it just created a lot of issues. And I just wasn't comfortable with that, but that's a whole different program there.
Sure.
So,
and I think this follows that suit as well. I mean, if your only option is if the 600s start phasing out, 750s are not there. I think Suzuki's the only one that makes 750. I think it just phases into what are your options motor-wise.
What they did with the Legend series, I guess they call it INEX 600 now. Like they have their own engine. It's a Yamaha. I guess it's a 3-cylinder, but they kind of went to like a spec motor deal, and maybe that's possible for this. But that goes back to what we talked about earlier: having an engine builder in every corner. There's a lot of engine builders that won't be happy with that. So.
Oh yeah, they won't be happy with that at all.
No. All right, so we're racing. We decided we're not racing. Where did your racing career go, and what are we doing there?
Well, I've always been involved in it. Hell, with my wife, poor woman, she's been involved in this through, I don't know, multiple race cars, 6 or 7 maybe. brand new, not brand new, something to experiment with, something to play with. Anyway,
Just got to keep you occupied somehow.
somehow, right? Something to do. And at a certain point in time, when I decided was going to quit racing, hell, I got into barbecuing at one time, competition barbecue. Whole different game. Kept the Hey Mr. Who name, cooking team. And we took that path for quite a few years and still enjoy it when I do go do it. But the racing just seems to always draw me back.
Draws you back.
Yeah. It's really, after 36, 37 years from my youth, it's enjoyable.
You still get a fire in your belly when you go to the track and hear the sounds and smell the smells.
Man, I do want to race. I ain't gonna, BS anybody. It would be very enjoyable too, but at 50 anymore, I don't know where I would play out. I think that's where me building a car recently and then selling it. I wasn't sure what if I wanted to do it or not, and I had certain goals for myself, and I didn't reach those goals personally. One is my shape and wanting to be there where I could be what I think extremely competitive. Hell, I sold the car to the guy, and he raced it last night, and he won his first heat race after 3 years of running mini sprints.
How long had it been since you built a new car to you started building this one that you just sold?
Well, in 2020, I built Isaiah a brand new car, Isaiah Garcia, and from the ground up at my shop, and then I built another gentleman named Ricky Raper. I built his car in 21, and
so very much still involved with the technology, very much still involved with what's going on. Are you working hand in hand with like Sawyer or Factor One or any of those guys, offering up some ideas, or are you working with them on some of your own custom stuff?
Well, I've always talked to Jimbo at Factor One. We get along very well, and he's been very perceptive to anything I throw out there, and it's we've carried on a good relationship now for 15 years or more, and if I have anything to offer, hell, he probably already knows it anyway, because he's been around the game a long time.
Yeah, super nice folks. We took our car up there and had them do some updating. We spent a lot of time there. Probably got in their way, but I was blown away by. It wasn't as much of a race car shop as it was a machine shop.
Right.
That was different for me. They weren't doing anything wrong. They were doing everything right, but I didn't realize how much machining actually goes on in these cars. And in talking to them, not only do they do their own stuff, they do a lot of stuff for other chassis manufacturers, other builders, other oil field companies, just a lot of stuff going on there, not just the mini and micro sprints.
Yes. They keep the machines running around the clock.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yes, sir.
So you briefly touched on it, and then you got away from it, but the barbecue deal. So you were just sitting at home one day, decided I'm going to go barbecuing?
Well, I was sitting around there, and I'd actually sold a race car, and I went about, 2 years and didn't have nothing competitive, nothing. And my neighbors where I live at, they got us into doing an annual cook-off out there in the Orange Grove area. And, man, we cooked and cooked and cooked, and I just didn't know what we were doing wrong, not to do any winning or anything. And I thought I cooked the hell out of food, and I probably did. I cooked it too much or not enough. And anyway, I started seeing this stuff on TV, this barbecue pitmaster stuff, and I thought, well, hell, let me figure out what this is. Anyway, got into that pretty heavily. All them guys you've seen on TV, I've been to their schools. I checked them out, seen what they had to offer. And so we done all this, and the technology come along. I bought, the best of the best pits.
So what is a barbecue smoking school? What does that consist of? Tell us. Don't give away all your secrets, but tell us a little bit about, like, what do you learn there? What do you?
Well, they basically do a full rundown of what their timelines are, to their seasonings, to their prep, to everything they do to do barbecue. And I found it. I was like, well, hell, this is as competitive as racing. Let me go try this for a little while.
Was it any cheaper?
No, by no means. I think my wife can agree with that. Before it was over with, had a 34-foot enclosed trailer with cooking quarters, bathrooms, generators full on, self-contained, pits that drove themselves in and out of there, or you just drive them, steer them, whatever you need to do. I've gone from the full meal deal to down to nothing, and it was.
You were committed.
I was pretty damn committed for sure. Hell, they looked as good as most race cars I've ever had, paint jobs and all.
Awesome. No, you take pride in it for sure.
Yes, sir.
So what kind of competitions did we compete in? When we traveled all of Texas, anywhere and everywhere?
A lot in Texas. Yes, we've been up to Concan, to Houston. I did one recently in Winnie, over there cooking for Winnie Welding Works, and we finished 5th overall and got a few trophies, and it was very enjoyable. But hell.
So
like I said,
you're a hired gun. Not only are you a hired gun in the mini sprint, micro sprint world, you're kind of a hired gun in the barbecue world at this point.
For some people, yes, sir. They continue to bring me back since 2017. I've got them in the top 10, most time top 5.
What's your specialty? What's the
Brisket.
Mr. 2 specialty? Mr.
Brisket.
Who's specialty? Brisket, huh?
I got more trophies in brisket than anything else.
Who
Belt buckles.
Who do you feel like schooled you the most on the brisket side? You said you went to the schools, or is it something that you picked up on your own?
Well, it was it's a modified version of a guy that built me a couple of pits. His name was Danny Patton. It was his recipe. I modified it. He builds one-man pits out of Shiner, and I just tweaked it a little bit, and I'm telling you,
It works.
I still cook it for quite a few years, and it still just works.
Awesome. So where does Hey Mr. Who Racing go from here? So not last night, 2 nights ago, you sold your car.
I
that
did.
You built, brand new car that you built, your baby.
I
sent you
did.
some videos running it up and down the road.
Man, it was a tough decision to make, but I get a lot of enjoyment out of helping people anymore. There's a group of guys I help out of Lake Jackson and Brazoria area now, and they've got their kids all involved in it. And in fact, one of the kids, he won his first junior sprint heat race last night.
It's neat to see the kids do well.
It is, and knowing that I made a few suggestions, and they said that worked. And just watching the car go around the track, and when you see certain aspects of it, and you say, if we tweak this or do that, and a lot of times you don't have to change all the springs and shocks. You just tweak a little bit of what you got, and then
changes
makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Yes.
Small changes goes a long way. We've learned that in our big car world as well as the small car stuff. We've learned there's a time and a place for a big swing, but there's also a time and a place for a small swing. It's more so just slowing yourself down and actually stopping and analyzing what's going on.
Sure.
You can out adjust yourself really fast.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk a little bit about the growth of what you've seen of Isaiah, what you've seen of Maverick, and maybe some of those other, what I'm going to say youngsters, because I'm 46 years old now. You've known them since they were little. So let's talk a little bit about the growth that you've seen in those guys. And as well, those youngsters are hot shoes at Alvin, but can go anywhere in the country and run competitive, and they've proved that. Yes,
they have, and proud of both of them. They do very well. And the story of Isaiah, I mean, it's in 2018, I was doing competitive barbecue then. I was pretty hot on the trail, and I really didn't want to get, back into racing because I was kind of out of the scene for a couple of years.
You never get out.
Well, I got drugged back in, right? And so my dad, he was doing the fuel injection and tuning and everything for Isaiah about 2018. And I think prior to that, I'd never met Isaiah and I never met a Don. They had, in August of, I think it was August of 2018, my dad called me out of the blue and he said, hey, are you willing to talk to somebody about setup and this, that, and the other and racing? I said, sure, I don't mind helping out anybody. What I know, that's all I can give them is advice. And so he gave me a Don's number and I called a Don. And back then, you couldn't get 3 words out of Isaiah. He was quiet as can be. Sometimes you'd have to ask him if he could still talk.
But a Don doesn't talk a whole lot either.
No, well, me and the Dons had a lot of conversations, over the years. Anyway, I called a Don and I said, hey, I don't know how better to do this. And I'm just going to drive there in Harlingen. I said, I'm just going to drive down there and look at your car. I've never seen it. I don't even know what, this type of chassis you're running. So my wife, she hopped in the truck and I said, all right, let's go down there and we'll make a day of it. And so we're visiting with them. And finally, I just measured some things on Isaiah's car and we had the scales and we had things sitting there. And I said, what do you want to do? And he said, Don looked at me and he said, well, whatever you want to do. And I said, okay, I'm going to change the car. So that's how we kind of hit it off at that point in time. And I think it took him 3 races and he won his first feature over in Beaumont.
Well, they must have thought, they must have thought enough of you for a Don to allow you to do that because Isaiah is it's his pride and joy as far as I know.
Sure.
And they've won a lot of races together for him. So for him to have the faith in you to allow you to do whatever you thought was the right thing to do. And obviously Don and Isaiah both learned from that. So. Oh
yeah. No, it's been a transition, us getting to learn each other. And then as the time progressed, I'll make suggestions and I would think that I helped, make him what he is today. Cause last night I can walk by and visit with him a minute and we can discuss the car and he goes immediately. That's one thing that nobody can take away from him. He puts in the muscle and the work and all I do is give advice now and it's pretty nice.
Yeah.
And I think it plays off in his racing and I think he appreciates it. So, I'm still there in his corner as much as I can be. And in fact, there's a few other guys that I visit with last night and still give them advice as well.
Talk about some of the youngsters that you see there at Alvin in the younger ranks. Obviously, you guys have the Mighty and the Mini carts up there. You have the junior sprints. You have the restrictors. Who are some of the up and comers?
Well, with the one of the very competitive persons right now with Isaiah is Maverick Elkins, and he's a very determined young man too. And I've raced with his grandpa. I've raced with his dad. They've been around this racing for many years and very much respect. Me and grandpa, we've had a lot of set up conversations and just BS conversations too. And had fun with it over the years. And it's he's an up and comer and he's doing very well. When you go from there, that whole family line, the Tim's daughter's married to a McNeil. Well, the McNeils, they've been racers there in Alvin, and me and Grandpa, James McNeil, we had some hell of a races.
Some battles
back in the day, but we respect each other very much, and the son, he's always been involved in the racing as well. Michael McNeil. It's been good times to know these people, proud to watch them bring their generation up. And, it's really a good thing. Hopefully it keeps the racing thriving up there in that area and the mini sprint go-karts and everything else.
So is there another build in the near future for yourself or for a customer?
Well, I had somebody reach out to me and, I think them. They're interested in getting into the mini sprint racing world and got reached out through a neighbor that knows that I do that in my neighborhood, and I told him I'm willing to help anybody. If I help them build anything or give them advice, whatever it takes.
Yeah, no, there's been some interest sparked here in the Corpus area about some mini sprint, some micro sprint stuff. We have some very talented youngsters that run in our go-karts around here. We run some winged outlaw carts as well as some flat carts. There's been a ton of interest. All it's really going to take is for 2 or 3 of us to get together, put some cars out there and see where it goes from there. But the catch is it's the expense. So if it doesn't work out here, I'm already invested, but I would have been invested one way or the other. So if we get a couple more cars maybe in the area, we can see what happens. But I enjoy going to Alvin. Something I tell everybody that will listen to me is when you put 20 of those micro mini sprints on that track in Alvin, it's a show.
It is.
Because even the cars that are maybe not as fast as the top 3 are still hauling ass. It's organized chaos is the best way I can explain it.
Well, if you go to the Gulf Coast Speedway website and look at people posting about the races last night, there was some slide jobs back and forth, and a lot of people said that was some damn good racing last night, back and forth, and at the end of the day, Isaiah pulled it off, but they had a restart, and it was pretty mixed up there for a while and fun to watch.
Yeah. One of the first times I went there, I was watching. That's my pride and joy. I've owned a lot of race cars, big cars, little cars, and everything in between. But I really enjoy. We call her Norma Jean. She's a Factor 1, but I really enjoy that car. I don't drive it. Ray Allen drives it for me just because I'm a bigger guy. So I let Ray drive it. But one of the first times we went there, I was blown away by the fact that they would run that thing off in the corner and bounce the right rear off the guardrail like it was no big deal. Just go.
That's it.
It blew my mind.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, use the wall to your advantage, the best you can.
Yeah, and if that wall had been 10 foot further out, they would have taken all that 10 foot. So,
well, before the guardrail, all you had to lean on beside that was the off the track.
That or your neighbor, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Well, man, I've had a really good time talking to you today. We've discussed a lot of things. Obviously, we discussed kind of the transition in your eyes from where the mini and micro sprints were basically when they started. I've really enjoyed the history. I've really enjoyed the stories. Hopefully we can get folks out there to understand that, hey, Mr. Who Racing is still around. Hey, Mr. Who Racing still wants to be involved. If there's some folks out there that want to reach out to you, is that okay?
Oh, yeah.
Just
my only request is, I'll help. Just ask.
Just message you after midnight or something, right? Is that what it is?
Well, preferably way before that. I have my rules. Before 9 o'clock, we're good.
Yeah. Cool deal. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I've had a great time, and thanks for coming on the Thunder Road podcast.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Good deal. I would like to thank Kenneth Pearson, the Mr. Who of mini and micro sprint racing, for coming on the show. I'd also like to take a moment to thank our sponsors: One Tool Bodies, Prolate Fabrication, Top Hat Signs and Designs, RAK Suspension and Consulting, and of course, S&S Monuments.